Long time no live. Hello, it's your girl, Aisha. Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock here in Palo Alto, and it's 5 o'clock. Hi, Shibani. I'm here dancing to Afrobeats music. Let me turn this off. Hello, hello, hello. I just waved at Shibani Joshi. Hello, everybody. It's your girl, Aisha, founder and CEO of Bossy Cosmetics. Long time no IG Live. Very excited to be here today after, I think it's been about a week or so, not a week, a month or even more. Did an IG Live, but I've invited a really super amazing woman named Shibani to join me today on a bossy chat. And hey!
Hi!
How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Long time no IG Live. I'm in the same boat as well. It's been a while.
I don't even know when. I'm embarrassed now at this point. Hi, I'm waiting as people come in. It's been such a harried and busy summer for all of us that are like multitasking and wearing lots of hats, mom hat, every other hat in the world,
Totally.
hustler hat. So it's just been tough, but I'm so glad we've got this chance to chat today.
Same. And you're looking fabulous as always.
Well, thank you very much. And you are looking as beautiful as ever. Here, let me just put
I got my bossy on in, what is this? In bravery. I've got my bravery on this afternoon.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm going to right here, journalist and more. And I'm waving to people as they come in. Hello, 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 folks, for coming in and for joining us. Let me pin this comment. And then, yeah, so lovely to see you again.
Great to see you.
We generally do these chats. We used to do them every month. I've kind of dropped the ball.
Yeah.
But it's really just about introducing really amazing, awesome, real women to our community. And so it's either for folks who can dial in on the live or people who watch later. A couple hundred people will watch over the next sort of 48 hours. Totally. And we just love to tell real stories. Like I always say, real stories, real women about life. And, I think you're an amazing woman. And so let's kick off with you just kind of do your 30-second or whatever intro of who you are in your own words. And then I've got a whole bunch of questions that will take us through this hour.
Great. Well, I am so honored to be here today. Thank you for having me and getting me back into the IG Live game too, because I needed a little kick in the butt on that.
Welcome.
I am Shibani Joshi. I am a journalist. I am a public speaker. I'm a burgeoning writer, and I'm a mom of 3. And my career has spanned everything from Wall Street, business school, working in digital media on the corporate side, and then I transitioned to on-air work as an anchor and tech reporter on the Fox Business Network and Fox News Channel. And now I work for a lot of different places, doing a lot of different things, and I'm living my best life. And I live in the Bay Area, not too far from you. And yeah, I'm paving my own path, as a lot of people are. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it because you've touched on a million things, right? Which is that you, first of all, are paving your own path, which, most women you speak to today are looking for either trying to do that or have done that, right? Everybody wants to kind of write their own script. I think the very traditional path of, 30, 40 years ago, our parents' generation, people are ripping up that script and really deciding to do something different on their own terms. Yeah. And then you've talked about, your career has been really varied. You talked about Wall Street. You talked about working as on air. I mean, and you've talked about writing. So let's start from the very beginning. How about that? And I'll start from the very beginning of your career. And I'd love to ask women, what about your upbringing? Mm-hmm. Would you say you are ambitious?
Absolutely. Yes.
And the reason I love to start off with asking that question is, over the last couple of years, people have used ambition as a dirty word, especially when it comes to women, right? Mm-hmm. It's like ambitious has now become bossy. She's bossy, which is annoying. She's ambitious, which is she's too pushy. So I always love to ask people, are you ambitious? You've said yes. Why? Tell me what that means to you.
I have always been hungry. I think that you're right. I think that ambition can have the same connotation as bossy, and particularly for women, ambition can mean almost like insatiable to some extent, right? And we as women struggle with that identity of like we should be happy with what we have and grateful and be not complacent, but really be in this place of gratitude about everything, and we can do those things, but I want more, I want more. I want to live my best life. I want to enjoy nice things. I want to have comforts. I want to have time to myself to spend it with the people that I love and that I care about. And my definition of ambition or maybe even success has morphed and developed over the decades. I believed, so I grew up, my parents are from India. They immigrated from India to the oddest of places, to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So I grew
Oh
up
my gosh.
yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma City and really feeling like an outsider, and feeling very different. My mom wore a sari and a bindi, and her hair was to the back of her knees, and we had Indian food, and we spoke different languages and had different customs and rituals and rules. I couldn't go out and date. I couldn't stay out until a certain time. Those things. And rightly or wrongly, I channeled that feeling of not being accepted, of being really different, into working really hard. That I'm going to find a way, using all of my hard efforts and hard work, to get to a place that I do feel accepted, and I do feel more welcome. And it turns out that I think looking back in life, I think it was the greatest of gifts to grow up that environment. And I love going back to Oklahoma, and I love, people were probably more accepting than I can appreciate, but it was those ideas that you have in your head that propel you for decades and decades until you look back and you're maybe through therapy or self-reflection or whatever it is, and you're like, it actually wasn't entirely that way. But that was my fuel, is that I didn't feel a part of my community. I didn't feel the same. And so I said, well, I'm going to work really hard to get to a place where I feel accepted. And for me, it came through hard work, good grades, all of those things. I watched a lot of TV growing up because I was a latchkey kid, and both my parents were at work, and I was highly impressioned by and influenced by the media. And that's where I started to develop dreams in TV and journalism and all of these things, but also this sense of new worlds and new possibilities in New York. And I had this dream. I want to live in New York. I want to work in New York.
From Oklahoma City to New York.
I want to work on Wall Street. And I took on that ambition, and I got a job in investment banking.
So hold on. Let's set the stage, okay?
Yeah.
So we've got this latchkey kid,
yeah,
first generation American, parents pretty traditional, have come from India and moved to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
She's watching lots of TV. Of course, we know the media shaped so many of us, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the hunger of being so different in Oklahoma City, is the birthplace almost of the ambition and the hunger and the drive to succeed.
Yeah.
And so tell us, okay, so New York now is obviously a whole new place for you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about now, after you graduate from undergrad, how did Wall Street become a thing for you? What drove you in that industry, and how did you do it?
So good question. So it came out of almost failure. So as a quote unquote good Indian girl, I wanted to be a doctor, as most Indian kids want to be. And I took my pre-med classes, and then I took other courses, and I realized that chemistry was not my bag. Like, I just could not do chemistry to save my life. I could do other things. I could do math. I could do other things. And so I would prop up my grades with business classes because it came more naturally to me. I was more interested in that. And so what I found myself doing was double majoring and having, pre-med and then finance and accounting, and trying to balance the two. And then finally by my junior year, when I got a C in organic chemistry, and then I took it again to show like myself, oh, I can do this better. I got a C again in organic chemistry.
You
I
kind of
was
threw
like,
in the towel at that point.
I had to throw in the towel. And that's when I realized I need to play into and dive into my strengths. And that's where business came in for me. Was, you know, it was a natural interest. I did have natural abilities in there. My parents did struggle with it. You know, they tried to get me to do industrial engineering or something more engineering and businessy around that. But I just said, no, I'm just, you know, I'll do my pre-med on the side. And then I started to contemplate what a future could look like in business. And that's when, you know, these ideas of these things that I had in my head from TV and like, what is business? Well, business is Wall Street and New York. And so I set this goal of, I had heard about Wall Street and I had heard about investment banking, and that's where that dream started to be born. But then the hard work and the long path to getting there began.
So okay, so let's go into, because we've talked about being, you know, feeling somewhat different in Oklahoma City. You
Mm-hmm.
moved to New York, but you're an
Yeah.
investment banker,
Yeah.
still as an Indian American woman. Did you see a lot of Indians on Wall Street?
I saw more Indians than where I was before. So,
Okay.
you know, and there were more women than where I was before, and there was more diversity than where I was before. You know, to Morgan Stanley's credit, they did have initiatives to bring in women and some efforts around diversity, although there were a ton at that time. But, you know, I remember being part of a women's group and a women's support group and being supported by women leaders inside Morgan Stanley. And this was back, you know, near 2000. So I remember those initiatives and developing friendships and mentorships with women through a corporate structure, which again, I think really for me reinforced the belief that business can be a force for good, can bring diverse, excellent women together. And through work and business, you can create these supportive structures, which is a lot of what you're doing with Bossy, right? Is you're using business to channel and bring together women. And that's where my first notion of that began.
Absolutely. And I want to echo that, because you dropped some really amazing pearls here, right? Which is, you know, you came into what is now a successful career from what you have termed as failure. And I constantly say, you know, are we really failing when we fail? You know, I told someone the other day, to me, failure is like when you have a challenge, you fall and you don't get up. I think once you get up, I'm starting, and maybe this is me just reevaluating the way I want to say it. I just refuse to say I failed at things. I say that didn't work out the way I wanted to, but here's what I learned from it. And so I think you fail when you keep repeating the same mistake over and over again. You're not learning, you're not growing, or you just give up. But doing things, I think when a door closes, another door opens.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay, so you go into Wall Street. How long were you an investment banker?
But I think that it is a mindset shift that is not easy, and I don't think that is part of the immigrant mindset shift. Is what I have to say. Is, you know, when you come in with an immigrant, you're either an immigrant or child of immigrants. That notion of failure comes with such a different connotation and cost, because it is survival in that environment. And I think that one of the things that I have had to shift in my own life is shifting from this survivalist mentality, from this no failures, no tolerance for failures mindset, because failure means bad things. I think those are old
it means shame.
It means shame.
And we're going to talk about your LPs later, but I want us to pick up on this point around this immigrant mentality, around the baggage we carry with failure, right?
Yeah.
It's not just failing, it's, oh my God, everybody knows that we did not succeed. Everybody knows that this didn't work out, right? And so there's that extra baggage of third-party observation, third-party validation that we carry as baggage.
And that is a huge part of immigrant culture, certainly part of the South Asian culture is what would people think. And that is something that very much drove the optics of what, you know, my family did, what they were pushing me to do, you know, and that is taking a lifetime to undo. And, you know,
Yeah.
something that I am confronted with in raising my own children. But back to sort of Wall Street and everything else. I mean, I think that you know, the great, and we've talked about this before, is as much as corporate jobs get a bad rap, and for the, you know, there's such a vibe right now of be your own boss, start your own thing, don't you know, be a part of the masses. And I think you'll probably agree with me that, you know, I earned my stripes during my time doing my corporate work. You know, I learned a lot about I learned different skills. I learned how to elevate my work to a certain level where I can do a lot of different things thanks to the boot camp of being you know, a
Yeah.
banker.
Yeah.
Even my work in digital media at Disney ABC, there was a rigor to everything that I was doing. And I made some of my greatest friends there also. And there
Yeah.
was impact on a different level that you don't necessarily get to make when you are in a startup. I mean, being a part of Disney ABC, being a part of, you know, Goldman or Morgan Stanley or whatever it is. I mean, I was a 22-year-old working on $500 million deals. I mean, talk about impact, right?
So let's hold on, because I think for anybody who's watching this now, we're going to watch this later. First of all, someone says, you know, giving yourself the space and grace to shift your mindset is freeing. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think, you know, learning and relearning and unlearning is such an important part of progress, right?
Yeah.
Because so many of the values and the notions that we hold as sacrosanct were given to us by community, right? Our parents, our community, all these things. And then you get to a point where you start to acquire some wisdom on your own, and you
Mm-hmm.
really have that freedom to kind of start to question and unlearn those things.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to kind of touch on, you know, this notion that you're covering around, you know, the career progression, and how you thought about, you know, how corporate careers have a bad rap. And it's a
Yeah.
struggle right now because there is a culture out there of, you know, move fast, break things, drop out of school, you know,
Yeah.
go start a company, raise $5 million, blah, 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 all these things, which, look, if you are, you know, the percentage of people who make it from those types of decisions, which is, you know, don't compare yourself to Mark Zuckerberg. There's only one on the planet,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are not a lot of people who are not white men, children of privilege, who
Right.
drop out of school, you know, raise $10 million, 20, 30, 40, 50, and rule the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So many of the rest of us, you know, we need to get that good education. We need to start to have, you know, that basic training and that basic understanding. And you get that from these boring corporate jobs, right?
Totally.
You go for the brand. You know, you've just talked about, you know, working at Morgan Stanley, the rigor, you know, the apprenticeship model that you grow through, right?
Mm-hmm.
You learn on the
Yeah.
job. People who've been doing it before are teaching you. That's what you got from ABC Disney.
Yeah.
And those are the things that help you to acquire credentials.
Right.
And
Right.
I say this to young people all the time. Look, I know you want to go out into the world and do your own thing and be amazing. And yes, everybody wants that. But there is some value to kind of setting a really strong foundation first. And then, like, look at you and I, right? We're
Huge.
not in our 20s or 30s, right? But we still have now had the time. And so I want to kind of shift into how you went from investment banking, ABC, these corporate jobs,
Yeah.
which even as you know, as a journalist, you were in a corporate role, but that's a big shift.
Yeah.
So talk us through
Absolutely.
how you decided, actually, I want to switch up the whole thing.
Yeah, so you know, one of the things that I've been very methodical about is being okay making transitions and
Mm.
finding a way to pull a string throughout my transitions. So, you know, even though I worked in investment banking, my next job out of after investment banking was a production assistant at CNN Financial Network, which no longer exists. But I brought my thread of knowing Wall Street, of, you know, I think there's a misinterpretation of like, okay, you're an investment banker, you know how to pick stocks. Well, I just went with that misinterpretation and I just said, yes, I know how to pick stocks, I guess. I used that background as leverage into breaking into TV. So I did that for about a year, and talk about paying dues. I mean, that's another thing that I talk to a lot of people about sometimes you just have to pay your dues. I was waking up at 2 a.m. to get to work and working on the morning show at CNN, and working the shift from 2 a.m. to 12 p.m. and getting off of work at 12, and basically working the graveyard shift for at least a year. And getting into business school was my savior out of the graveyard shift. And I was so grateful on so many levels to get into business school, but also because I didn't have to wake up in the middle of the night anymore.
Oh,
But that was the job that was offered to me. And I realized that if I had always had an interest in media, I knew how to do business. I had to find a way to bring it together and tell my story. And if you had to take the night shift to do that, to get your foot in the door, sometimes you have to do those hard things. And it won't be forever. I worked really hard, and I know I could have stayed and they would have moved me to a different level and done different things, but sometimes you have to do those hard things to get your foot in the door. But that, I have to say, was so instrumental in unfolding the rest of my career in journalism, because I looked like I had chops. I had the credentials of CNN. I got on the production side. It was only a year. But when I was ready to take the leap and get a job on TV, all of that stuff came into play. It gave me the resume and a sense of experience, even though I didn't have experience. It was those small little things. So then I went to business school, and then I took a corporate job at ABC Disney doing digital media strategy, whatever. So the interesting thing about my time at Disney was one of the projects I was working on was launching an online, someone had to work 5 a.m. at the grocery store. I mean, that's life. You know, you got to be there.
I know. You got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do. But what I did at night was I took night classes at NYU, and took odd and end jobs on the weekend. I worked at Indian TV stations that were broadcasting programming out of New Jersey.
So hold on. This was because you wanted to further your credentials in journalism.
Journalism.
And so you were taking the classes.
Yep.
You were doing the weekend jobs.
Yep.
Wow.
And the other thing I did was, again, here is where, you know, you build your track record. You work really hard in your job. One of my jobs when I was at ABC was launching their digital news network, which was called ABC News Now. So my job was to be a salesperson, to strategically brand it, to sell it to cable companies, mobile operators. And the studio was on the same floor. I worked in the headquarters of ABC News in New York, and was on the same floor where I was sitting. And after about 6, 8, 10 months, I asked the executive producer who I would work with to come up with my strategy for selling, you know, their content. I said, could I try being on air one day? And because I had put in the hard work and the effort, I had done the night classes, so I knew I wouldn't be a total idiot when I got in front of a camera. He was like, sure, literally nobody is watching, go for it. And so he gave me my first opportunity, Michael Clementi. He gave me my first opportunity where I went into a broom closet and sat in front of a green screen and like read a couple of things for ABC News Now, which nobody was watching. And all of that sort of came together. And at some point I just reached like a tipping point where I realized I want to do this every day. And I have built up enough, I know this with certainty because I've tested enough waters. I've done night classes for a year and a half, almost 2 years. I'm doing stuff on the weekends. I got some material from ABC News, which makes me look legit, even though it's not, as being as legit as going to grad school or maybe doing this as a full-time job, but I have enough to work with. And by the way, I'm ready to leave my job because it's just driving, I'm just at this tipping point. And so I left, and for 7 months, I took more odd and end jobs. So I did a producing job at Reuters. I did local TV at News One and no, News 12 in Westchester.
Wow.
I just took every job, and I'm 27, 28. No, I'm 20. No, I'm 30 years old. I'm 30 years old. I have an Harvard Business School degree. I've worked on Wall Street. I've done all of these things. And I was reporting on, traffic buildup in Westchester County.
Wow.
And and at that point, I had to say again, get your ego in check, get yourself in check. You're not better, you're not better than this.
Be humble, be hungry.
Be humble, be hungry. And that was a hard thing for me. That was hard because I had all this stuff going for me. And I thought, you should just put me on air today. But I'm glad they didn't, because the first time I actually did get on air on national news, I froze. I did not know what I was doing. And I'm so glad that, I had that runway. And I recovered and I pulled it together, and I worked there for 7 years. So, and it ended up being fine, but I did not get what I wanted when I wanted it. And thank God for that.
So many, oh my God, gems being dropped. I mean, like, I always try to, when I have these conversations, just make sure I'm pulling out what I'm hearing in terms of gems and the wisdom here. And, be humble, be hungry, stay with it. Have patience, invest in yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Like people always, I love how you talked about you embrace transitions. Yeah. I'm the exact same way. Like if you look at my resume, it's like, girl, what are you doing? You're like, you've done so many things. And people always say to me, oh my God, Aisha, you're so fearless. And I'm like, no, that's the wrong message. I definitely have a lot of fear, but I have courage. So I still march forward in spite of the fear. And it's because of this belief in myself. It's because of this. I'm so hungry. I'm going to get it. Whether I'm afraid or not, I'm just going to keep working. And the other thing I want to say is around investing. I always tell people, investing in yourself is not being risky. If you have $100 and you can invest that money in you bettering yourself for whatever your dreams are, that is $100 well worth spent. And so I wanted to pull out those messages as you talk about. I want us to move to talk about Fox News. Like, how did you, that's when you landed, right?
Yeah.
First of all, how did that feel to be picked? Right? Yeah. How did that feel to finally, like after all of the hustle and the investment and the drudgery, how did it feel?
I would also, I should add in there, start small. I did an Instagram post, I think last week, where I posted my first headshot, and I did
saw that.
I did that. That was one of the first things that I had done, when I realized I wanted to do something else. Sometimes you don't know where to start. So a headshot is a good place to start, and then it was enrolling in a night class, and it was looking for this job and looking for that job. So I would say starting small helps, giving yourself enough lead time. So by the time I was ready to leave ABC, I mentioned I had done a few semesters of night school, done stuff on the weekend, gotten enough to have what they call a reel. So it was enough clips to look like you've done. And I would go on vacation. So this is another thing that I would do that my then husband and I would do, is we'd go on vacation, we'd go down to Miami for the weekend. I'd bring my camcorder, because that's what you did at those times. I'd bring my camcorder and I'd say, you're going to be my cameraman and you're just going to record stuff for me. And I would create stuff for my reel while on vacation, and, you know, just keep, and that's what I would do. I was relentless, you know, about thinking about ways to continue to add to, you know, my sense of being invested in this. And
Wow.
so I left my job October of 2006. And then for 6 months, I took odd and end jobs, I mentioned. I also went out to get an agent, because that is the way that that business worked at that time. It's still that way, but a little bit less so. And I landed an agent, and the every universe was aligned in that I started to get interviews, and my agent got me in front of people, and he called me and said, Fox is launching a business network and they want to interview you. And I thought, okay. So I had, you know, gotten my suit on, went there, showed up. And if anybody has seen that Fox News, what is that movie called? I forgot it. I watched it, about Megyn Kelly and whatever. But
Ah,
anyways, so there's the infamous second floor in the News Corp building, and he had told me I was just going for my first interview, and didn't realize that the second floor was where it was at. All the executive sits there. And I went through glass door after glass door, then talked to an assistant and got put into this sort of holding room, and was reading some newspapers that were sitting there. And then the assistant said, Roger's ready to meet you. And I went in to meet Roger Ailes.
wow, that was your first interview? Oh my gosh.
And I had, you know, a half-hour long conversation with Roger Ailes, and there was nothing inappropriate that happened, you know, nothing similar to the movie. He did ask me a lot, you know, me being from Oklahoma was actually a huge advantage, because he believed me to have a certain political affiliation. But then he
Which
saw
he found
Harvard.
favorable.
Yes, but then he saw Harvard on my resume, and he said, "Oh, you went to Harvard? You must be a liberal." And I said, "I wouldn't call myself that." I said, I think I consider myself an open and fair and balanced person. I said, "I grew up in Oklahoma and I understand both sides." And I think that statement is what got me that job, because I think, and it has informed me. And so as I think about the trajectory of my life, you know, I think my ability to have grown up in that part of the world and understand different voices has been such actually a contribution to my life in so many different ways. And even when I was, you know, on air at Fox Business, I thought about talking to my friends. I thought about talking to my teachers. And
Yeah.
that was like the most rewarding part of my job. Is my fifth grade teacher emailed me and said, "I just saw you on TV. I'm so proud of you." My third grade teacher did that. My parents' friends would turn on the TV
Wow.
and see me, and it just made me feel so proud of myself,
So you get on
being able
Fox
to do that.
News
Yeah.
and it's amazing. It's everything that you had been working towards and
Yeah.
investing in, right? And you get it. How did it work out that you were going to focus on, you know, tech reporting? And did you get to pick that? Was that luck?
So let me tell you about when I first heard. So I done that interview and then went off. I had my husband and I at the time, we had planned a vacation. I think we went to Hawaii or something. Like, just we had planned a nice vacation, and my agent called me and said, "Fox wants to hire you." And I hung up the phone and I looked at my husband and I was like, "What am I doing? Like, are you joking me?" And he was like, you know, for all of our ups and downs, he's always believed in me, and he was like, "Do it. Like, are you joking me?" And I was like, "Oh crap, I didn't really think that this could happen. And I had that complete moment of panic that I was
Oh,
like, I don't know what I'm doing, how I got myself here. Like, am I really capable of this? And I had a lot.
imposter syndrome affects
I lived with
everyone.
that for a long time. I have to tell you, Aisha, I lived with that for a long time.
I
Sometimes
still
you
live with imposter syndrome.
absolutely, it's a real thing, but it is not. It was not a sign that I didn't belong there. It was just uncomfortable because I have felt imposter syndrome many, many times, but not to that extent. Like I showed up and, there's certain things, there's certain terminology I didn't even know. I was pretending like I knew. There was certain equipment. There's a thing called an IFB, an earpiece, which you put in your ear to talk to whoever you're talking to on TV. And they asked me where my IFB was. And I was like, I've never had one of those. I don't know what that is. And like another anchor heard that and she like rolled her eyes at me and was just like, I can't believe, what is this girl doing here? And I was like, oh shit, I'm cursing here, but I just was like, oh my God, there's like so many things that, people are going to find out. And there was a lot of that fear. And there was a lot of trial by fire. I mentioned that the first time I got on air, it was with Neil Cavuto on the Fox News Channel on his show, and I kind of froze and I stumbled, and my husband watched me and he was like, "You'll just get better." And I was like, "That's the worst feedback I've ever gotten. Like, I'm gonna get better." No, that's not what I wanted to hear. I want you to tell me I didn't do as bad as I thought. and
But you got better.
But I got better and I kept getting better. And I kept getting better because I showed up at work at 5 a.m. They asked me to stay late until 7 p.m. And I said yes every single time. They told me to go to the NASDAQ. I went to the NASDAQ. They told me to go to the NYMEX and talk about oil and commodities trading, which I knew nothing about, but I learned it. I learned it, doing research. I said yes every single time. And I became that person. They told me to do radio reports. They told me to do local news hits, which, there is a hierarchy in journalism and in the news business is you want to be national. You don't want to do local. You don't want to do radio where you don't get seen. And I was like, I'll do it all. I'll do whatever you want me to do because all of it makes me better. And at least I can be that person that that says yes. And I did that and I hustled for years and years and I made mistakes. I would get phone calls of, you got to say this differently. I wasn't politically saying things differently, but like I have to, there's certain things that, you have to say to make sure that they're accurate and factual and all these things. And sometimes I get them wrong and I get phone calls and those are terrible phone calls to get. And you fix it, you get back up there and you got to do it again every single day. And eventually they had me fill in anchoring shows. Eventually, I have always loved tech. I have been playing video games since I was 5-6 years old. I have just always loved tech and they sent me to the NASDAQ and I ran with it and they had not intended for me to be like a tech reporter, but I loved it so much. It came across and they said, do it, own it. And I owned it. And that became the platform for me really gaining competency, gaining confidence. And then from there, I got more experience. And then that's when they started to put me at the anchor desk. And eventually I was anchoring a 1-hour show and doing things on election night and all sorts of things. And it was, it was just remarkable. When I sometimes I just pinch myself and I'm like, I can't believe some of the things I've done because it feels like a dream sometimes.
So, okay, thank you for sharing that amazing journey with us. Why don't we quickly talk about what you're doing now, and then I want to talk about the L piece, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So tell us what you're up to now.
Yeah, so I left Fox a few years ago. I don't remember how many years ago. And I moved to the West Coast with 3 kids, wanted to shift gears. I felt like, I was ready to get off the hamster wheel. I had 2 kids in Manhattan. It was already getting really challenging. And that just wasn't the life I wanted to have long term and for my family. And so we moved to the West Coast. Now I live in the Bay Area and my kids are older and I'm getting back into stuff and I'm creating a career that works for me using a little bit of everything that I've done before. So I do a lot of freelance work. I do a lot of things for CNBC, still doing business and finance and tech. I work and I host a lot of events for big corporations, technology companies, business companies, leading their conferences, strategy sessions, earnings calls. So I do that. And then I've developed a new passion for writing. I've always, been a person who writes in her diary, in her journal, and I've done that my whole life. And then I started to think about writing for public audiences. And so I went to a writing workshop, a conference, a 2-week program at Yale about 3 years ago. And I gave them some of my stuff, and it was the first time I had workshopped things, and I got obliterated. My writing got obliterated by this writing group, but I also realized that I have things worthy of saying, and I have some talent that needs to be nurtured and developed there. And so I'm now working on that. And my fall goal is to come up with a book proposal, which,
Wow.
that I would like to write a book. And if I could explain it to you, then my job would be done. It would be easy for me to write, but I can't quite articulate it yet. And that's where the
That's
work
okay.
from. Yeah.
So I love this because this has been a beautiful journey, right?
Yeah.
As we started off, this girl who was born to parents who, you know, crossed the seas and made their way, right, to
Yeah.
Oklahoma City and, worked your way through school and, got these jobs, Wall Street, ABC, Disney digital marketing to, just the super, super hustle because you had identified the space in media that you really wanted to get into, but
Yeah.
it's not a job you go and apply for. So you were humble, you were hungry, and you made your way, you had this career, a really successful, phenomenal career, and then you decided to, do what I call a portfolio adjustment, right?
Yes.
Which is, that's what I call it, right? Like
Yeah.
in finance language, which is, you
Yeah.
don't just have a 1 9 to 5 that you go to every day. And as we said earlier, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's so much that one can learn in terms of building foundation. But kind of been there, done that, have the t-shirt. Now you're saying, I want to do a whole bunch of things because there's so many different areas because of this 20 some odd year career that I have skills in. So I'm still doing tech reporting. I'm still doing, like using my skills to host earnings calls with big tech companies and big corporations and
Yeah.
to, handle lots of management issues there and writing, right? You have this new thing where you've invested in yourself with going for this program now, writing. So I love the arcs of your journey, right? It's not just, I always tell people the career journey is never just sort of linear, like everybody goes like that. Most of us, that's not the way it works. Like you kind of go down, you go up, you go left, you go right, you go up, you go, it's a journey.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about, so you've referred to several times, you're a mom, you have 3 kids, you've
Yeah.
talked about your husband
Yeah.
a number of times.
Yeah.
And then I came across, you shared on social media an article that you wrote in Elle magazine, which touched me
Mhm.
so deeply.
Oh.
And I'd love to let people use their own words to describe situations for themselves. Would
Yeah.
you mind sharing with the folks who are watching and anybody who watches in the future what that article is about?
Yeah, so take a look. You can look at my Instagram feed for the piece that was published at the end of March of this year. And it was published by Elle Magazine. And I wrote about my Indian American divorce. And um, I wrote it one for cathartic reasons because I was emotionally, I had a very difficult time deciding to get divorced, and bringing it back to some of the themes that we talked about when we first began this conversation about what would other people think, what does failure mean, what are the roles of traditions in immigrant family cultures,
Yep.
all of these things, and in my head and in my culture, Indian culture, um, divorce is taboo. Now, what I now know is it's less taboo, and particularly in in India, it is more common than it was. But my parents left India in the 70s, and that's the mindset that they carried, and those are the values frozen in time that were passed down to me. And I felt for a long time I couldn't get divorced. I had to suck it up and deal with it. And it wasn't an option because it would bring shame to my family, to me. And I questioned that. I obviously
Is
I
your
I'm not.
husband Indian?
Yes, he's Indian as well. Yeah, Indian American like me. I'm not a proponent of divorce, and I don't think it's any solution. But I also think that for women, we have to give ourselves a full spectrum of options when it comes to not only choosing to get married, but having the kind of marriage that you want, and being able to leave if you want to leave. And I was so progressive and independent in so many areas, but I was not when it came to marriage, because I wanted to marry a man of a certain background and, religion and all these things that were more traditional and aligned with my culture. And then also I realized my sense of marriage and the options around it were also very traditional, and that surprised me.
Yeah.
Um,
It
and
doesn't surprise me. It
yeah,
doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I think we talked about how, the learning, the unlearning, and the relearning process.
yeah,
And when you are, you say your parents left India in the 70s and they
yeah,
brought those traditions and values frozen in time, but from age 0 to probably 12, all of your values came from them.
yes,
Like, yeah, that is the foundational period. That is when you are, what is defined as right and wrong
yeah,
comes in your home. And
yeah,
so all those things are planted in you. Even if your parents never told you, you will bring us shame if you get divorced, you'll
yeah,
overhear it, right? You'll overhear it in conversations. They're talking about another family's daughter who left, or they're talking about what happens and what doesn't happen. So
yeah,
so many of the things that we hold as law, as sacrosanct, as right, as wrong, they come from our family, from our
yeah.
parents. So it
So
doesn't surprise me that even though you went into the world and you were so progressive, there
yeah.
was that one part that could not shift in your heart. It doesn't
Yeah.
surprise
Well, I was surprised. I guess I'm not as aware or enlightened as you, Aisha, but I was surprised, and um, I struggled also with the notion of divorce because I did not see any models around me in
me.
my culture, in my family, or at least that applied to me, right? So it wasn't that Indian people didn't get divorced. It was just that I had not seen any models that I felt would also carry over my family values and my sense of wanting to preserve some elements of a family. And we're hearing more of this now. I mean, I think these conversations that we're all having around family and motherhood and COVID and all of these things, like we're talking and we're unearthing things. And Gwyneth Paltrow talked about conscious uncoupling, and that was like sort of the first time I had heard about a different kind of divorce. Now, what I know about that, it's like a whole process, and it's trademarked by some psychologist, and so I wasn't conscious uncoupling, but my notion came from I want to still have an Indian family, even if I get divorced. And I have never seen anyone around me sort of do it in the way that I would like to do it. And sometimes I initially thought, well, that's a reason not to do it. Um, but circumstances were what they were, and we went through with it. And then we then came to, and we're in a collaborative phase. This is a collaborative thing because you need the participation of both partners. How can we preserve our family as much as we can?
Yeah.
And that is what,
It sounds like the article, in the way that you closed it out, or at
yeah,
least part of the conclusion, felt like while you did go through, the angst that you're describing right now, you do kind of have a good co-parenting Indian family structure, even though you're not together anymore.
yeah, I think that I ultimately made a great choice in a partner and a life partner to have children with. We're not, meant to be together, maybe married, but we do have the same values, and we do care for our family so much that we're willing to make certain sacrifices to make sure that we preserve certain aspects of the family as much as we can. It's not going to be the same as if we lived together and, had sort of a traditional marriage and a traditional family, but we do our best, and we're
Yeah.
just writing the script as we go along. Who knows what the future holds, and as the children get older and what life throws our way. I mean, who knows? But I think that what I have come to learn about myself through this and about life is, I played within the rules for much of my life, and I kind of broke the rules here and there on the fringe. And then I got to a point where I couldn't stay within the lines, and I couldn't stay within the rules any longer as I perceived them, as I believed them to be from what people told me the rules were. And then I broke them, and then I realized these rules never existed in the first place.
No.
These are
Isn't it
all
crazy?
constructs in our head that
Isn't it
we are
amazing?
bound by. And what other rules am I living by that don't serve me, that I think people are placing upon me, that I am only placing upon myself?
That is the gem of this discussion. I
Yeah.
I also I used to say that what many of us women don't understand, particularly women who are married in these types of cultures, is that we find ourselves in a jail cell. It could be a beautiful cell, right? I don't want to. Jail is a bit melodramatic, but you're in a cell. The door is not shut. There is no key. The problem is we haven't actually checked. And so I think that a lot of women, we put ourselves in this cell. We
Mm-hmm.
think, okay, we now live in this construct, and these are the boundaries by which we can operate. And the husband isn't holding you to that. The children are not holding you. Like nothing happens to you when you step your foot out the door. And so for me also, I think turning 40 was a huge realization that there was no lock on the door. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
this door is open? I
Yeah.
jailed myself?
Yeah.
And so I think of all, I mean, you've shared so many pearls here, and I want to thank you as we come up to the end of this hour of this fantastic discussion. It's just been really freeing to hear this. And I think my second to final question is, why did you want to write about it? When you, after going through this journey, why did you feel you wanted to share the story?
Um, so the first was therapy. Writing is therapy for me. And then when I wrote it, I realized I would have wanted to read this to know that there's a different way, and I wish I had read this piece when I
Mm,
was going through things. And I just wanted to be free,
yeah.
really. That's how I felt. I we had been separated for we had been separated, living apart, but we were pretending that we were still together because we did not have the courage to tell people, including members of our own family. And
Wow.
I just felt I could not live um, under the weight of that shame and that falseness any longer. And in a lot of ways, writing an article, just like everybody knows, I'm
I
done.
know, like,
My
woo!
uncles, my cousins, my friends, like everybody knows, I'm kind of done with it. But I
Yeah.
did it in a conscientious way. I hope, I think, I did get the permission. I sent my article and I wrote about this on my website, shibanijoshi.com. And I have like a bunch of personal writing that I do. I wrote about the story behind my L story, which was I asked for everyone to read it before I submitted it. And I asked them, is there anything that you don't agree with, you want me to look at? And everybody was okay with it. And
Yeah.
so it would have been a different story. I don't know if I would have not published it, if people are like, never, don't do this. But I wrote about my own personal journey, and I
Yeah.
wrote about my relationship with my father, which was the biggest issue for me, and obviously with my ex-husband. But I just wanted to free myself, and I wanted to share with people that there's other ways out there. And,
Awesome.
I forget about that.
Awesome. And so now my final question, thank you for sharing all of that, is, what advice do you have for anybody who's watching right now or anybody who watches this video later? What is your single pearl of wisdom that you feel like you can share?
Whenever you feel that you can't do something, dig deeper and examine what that belief is that makes you believe you can't do it. Is it real? Has somebody
Mm,
told you? Is it
mm,
old programming?
mm.
Or is it that it is impossible? Because those
Yeah.
are very different things, and nothing is impossible. Things can be challenging. But going back to those rules, um, we can
They don't
write,
exist.
they don't exist. We can write the rules in the way that supports us, lifts us up for ourselves, and change them anytime we want.
I love it. Thank you so much,
Thank
Shivani.
you.
This was such an awesome conversation. I'm so happy you're well. I'm happy your family is well.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story
Thanks
with
for
our
having me.
community.
I'm happy to see you. Let's do it again in person or
Absolutely.
otherwise. Yes.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching too. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. Oh, thank you, Lola.